Hi, it's Nika from Fabulously Creative. Welcome to my channel, and today I will be showing you how to make this Traveler's Notebook disc-bound album. So to get started, I cut my 3 pieces of chipboard, and the spine is 2 by 9 inches, and the front and back cover is 4 3/4 by 9. And I'm just starting off by drawing a line across the bottom of this 12 by 12 paper, just so I know where to glue my sheets so they are straight. And I am using just regular tacky glue, and I'm going to put a good amount down. And the reason I'm not using, normally I use glue tape for this, but I wanted to try something different because the spine kind of always cracks when I do the glue tape. So I'm trying something different. And I am just rubbing this glue in with a paintbrush, and I'm making sure I get a very thin layer. So any extra, I'm just rubbing on to the back of the album. And I'm rubbing it in really good to make sure all the corners are covered. And it is tacky glue, so it dries kind of like it gets tacky kind of quick. So once it's all covered, I just glue it down, and I make sure to press the edges in really good. You can also rub it in with a bone folder. Now for the other side, I do the same thing. I just rub the glue in with a paintbrush, and I make sure that it wasn't too thick. You want a very thin layer. You almost want to have to like kind of struggle to spread the glue around. And since it is tacky glue, it dries pretty quick. So if you're not struggling to spread it around, it's too much glue. And I'm just rubbing the extra on to the spine. And then I'm just going to make sure all the edges and the corners are covered really good, and then press it on. And again, you want to make sure your corners are pressed in really good. And I just kind of eyeballed like where I placed it at on the page. And now for the spine, we're going to do the same thing. And I forgot to draw the line at the bottom to align the spine, but it came out okay. I just kind of eyeballed it since this pattern does have a grid on the back of it. And for the spine, I did the same thing. Just spread the glue around and then press it in. And it really doesn't matter where you glue it. But if you're trying to conserve your paper, you can kind of glue it towards closer to the edge. So I'm going to cut out all 4 squares, and I left like maybe a half a inch around each side, and I just kind of eyeballed it. And then I cut each corner diagonally. And I'm going to do the same for the spine, but for the spine, you want to leave maybe an inch instead of a half an inch. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing this. And one side, you see, I did get a little too close to the edge. And I'm just kind of eyeballing that half an inch around each side, half an inch to 1 inch for the spine. And I am cutting each corner diagonally. Now I'm going to fold each corner for the front and back. And I'm just using glue tape for this part because it really doesn't matter if you use wet or dry. But for this part, the glue tape is a little easier. And I added glue to the top and bottom, and I'm just pushing the corners in before I fold them down. And I'm going to do the same thing for the front and back. And if you have any bubbles or any pieces sticking up, just go over it with a bone folder. Now for the spine, I am going to fold all 4 corners down, but I'm only going to glue the top and the bottom down. And once the top and bottom are glued down, I'm going to press in the corners, and then I'm going to kind of fold it back and forward so you can see the fold on both sides of the paper. And that is because I will be gluing it from the opposite side. So you want to be able to see that fold. And once I kind of eyeball everything, I am going to use just a strip of tacky glue right here. And when I make the next one, I may use a stronger glue just for this piece. The tacky glue is good, but I could have used a stronger piece. I may use a stronger glue for the next time I make this. But the wet glue does help you be able to move everything around in place. With the glue tape, once you stick it down, it is just done. You can't move things around. You can't adjust it. And if you try, you will tear or crack the album spine, which I kind of do. So I am just kind of smoothing everything into place, making sure the corners are straight. And this is that corner where I cut it a little too short. So I'm just pushing the edges and making sure everything is straight. And now for the other side, I would do the same thing. I'm going to glue the other side to the spine, and you're basically putting it on top of the spine. I'm not sure if you can see it with the floor pattern, but I'm gluing the back on top of the spine. And again, you want to make sure you can see that fold so you know not to glue over that fold. And again, while the glue is still wet, I'm just kind of pressing everything in place and kind of moving things around, making sure everything is straight. And again, I press the corners again to make sure the corners are straight. And this is the corner where I cut it a little too short. And once everything is straight, the way I like it, I'm going to put the cinch tool on top and just leave it for a minute. And I kind of use the cinch tool as a weight. So now we are gluing the inside of the album, and I'm kind of using the same method. I'm using that same tacky glue, and I am putting a pretty large amount. You don't have to make sure, like you're not making sure that it's a thin layer. So for the inside, I am putting a pretty thick amount of glue. And then I am pouring water into just a capful of water. And I'm going to use the water to spread the glue around. And what this will do is it kind of wets the paper and gives it it makes it a little more flexible during that drying process, and basically so you can get it on straight, and also press the press the creases in without tearing your paper. And now I'm just going all around the edges, making sure there is enough glue on each edge. And you can kind of see how wet the paper is. That other side is starting to curl a bit, and this is cardstock that I'm using. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue it to the inside. And at this part, you can straighten your paper. Like it's kind of wet, so you can kind of move it around. And I am going to gently press in the creases with a bone folder. Be very gentle so you don't tear it, even though it really won't tear because the paper is wet. And this also helps everything kind of stretch into place. And again, I'm still kind of moving things around, making sure everything is straight. And for the corners, I am going to put little binder clips just so everything can dry straight. And I'm going to put a binder clip around, I'm going to put it on each corner. Before I put the rest of the binder clips, I am using some washi, and I'm basically going to tape the album closed. And I put the washi on the back of my hand first to make sure that it is not too sticky and it won't rip the album. So it's basically just to hold it closed while it dries. So I'm adding more binder clips to each corner. And before I add each binder clip, everything is still wet, so you can kind of smooth it around and make sure everything is straight. So now that it's all dry, it is time to add the binding. So I just cut a piece of piece of chipboard down for the inside, and I'm going to use the cinch. I'm using the cinch disc insert, and I am just going to punch the top of it and put my discs on. And I had to punch it twice. The first time it wasn't in all the way. And this will kind of be the base for the pages that I add to the album. And it will be glued down just like that. So for this part, I wanted to use a bit of stronger glue. If you have any of the red double-sided stick tape, that will work, but I didn't have any more, so I'm using the E5000 glue just to make sure that the bottom is glued in there really good. And I'm adding a pretty good amount of glue, and I'm also making sure I get glue in between each disc. That way the disc won't wobble around. And I have that little punch there just to hold it down, because it doesn't lie exactly flat. And I'm making sure I press the glue in between each disc. And you can kind of see the disc straighten up as I press it down. And once this is dry, it'll just make sure the discs aren't wobbling around every time you use the album. And I put the cinch tool just to let that dry for a few minutes. And now we are going to put our first layout in our traveler's notebook. And I'm really excited because traveler's notebooks, you kind of have to keep it thin. You can't use a lot of dimension. So this way you can use all the dimension and still stick to a traveler's notebook format. So this is it all complete. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and stay tuned for more.